Hi everyone. This video is going to be a little bit different. I'd like you to do something called a code along. So that means that as I go about doing things, I would like you to follow along and type along your code as well. So if you've got a second screen you can use, like this video on like a cell phone or tablet or something, while you follow along on your laptop, that might be great. If not, you'll just need to pause and tab over as needed, or resize and get both, get things looking side by side like this as you need to. Anyway, I'd like you to try this as we go along, because you can learn the most by doing, and doing instead of just watching. Okay, so this is what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to recreate this portfolio. Last video I talked about the box model, about padding and margins and borders and stuff. We're going to be using all of these ideas to recreate this site. And then I'm also going to show you guys where to find some cool free pictures that you're allowed to use, even commercially. Okay, so first of all, we're going to need an HTML document and a CSS document. So let's call this portfolio.html. Save that to the desktop, HTML tab, and let's call it photo portfolio. Always a good idea to put the title in first thing and hit save. And then let's make a CSS file. So let's save this as, let's just say port.css, save that, and let's link that up. So we want link, tab, and then the href is port.css, hit save. And to make sure this is working, let's just set the background, or let's set the body background to red. Okay, so all we've done, we made a blank HTML file with a title and a link to a CSS sheet that changes the color to red. And if they're both saved, then we should be able to, here we are, portfolio.html. Perfect, we've got a red background. Okay, so they're at least linked up. Good. So first thing we're gonna do is, the way we're going to do this is going to be a little bit strange, because images can be very different, can have different heights and different widths. And it can be really awkward to make images line up properly, because you can get completely different sizes depending on the image you have. I'm sure you've noticed, as you put images into your HTML document so far, that if you put in a huge image, it ends up being huge on your HTML page. And if you put in a tiny image, it ends up being tiny. And it looks really ugly to have images be different sizes, particularly in a gallery application like this. So what we're going to do instead, we are not going to put any images in our HTML at all. What we're going to do is we're going to, cheat a little bit. We're going to make divs, because divs are a block line element. We're going to make 9 divs, right, for our 9 images. We're going to give them each a unique identifier, and then we're going to set each div to have a background picture. Okay, so that's sort of our strategy for this. So let's go through into our HTML. Let's give it an H1. And I'm going to put my name. And I'm actually going to type my name normally, because I'll show you how to make it uppercase later. So let's say that's Trevor Armstrong. And then I'm going to make a div. And I'm going to give it an ID of image. I'm going to make it image 1. But I'm going to duplicate this over and over again. So let's, what is that, 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's duplicate it one more time. 8, 9. And by the way, the command to duplicate, what menu is under? I'm not sure where it is in here, but anyway, it's Command Shift D or Control Shift D. Anyway, it's on the menu somewhere. I'm not sure where it is exactly, but it's really helpful if you want to do something like this, where you make a whole bunch of things at once. Now, divs are a little bit strange in that when you make divs float, which we're going to do, it gives them a height of 0. So we are going to sort of cheat a little bit. Our divs are going to have no content in them at all. These div tags are going to stay completely empty. What we're going to do is we're going to add some padding above our content. So our content is essentially going to be empty because there's nothing inside the div. And we're going to add padding. And padding, content plus padding plus border, all makes up the size of an element. Margins don't count because they're just space around the element. So we're going to add some padding to our divs to force them to have some height. So let's go through how we're going to do that. So let's style our divs. And all of our divs we're going to want to have a width. And I'm going to say 30%. And we're going to give it some padding top of, well, let's do 30% for now, and we'll see why we want to change that later. And then let's give them a background just so we can see what's going on. Let's do background. I like cornflower blue, if I can spell it. Cornflower blue. And just so we can see what's going on, let's give them all a margin of, let's just do 5 pixels for now. just to make sure that everything's working. The reason we want a margin is we want to be able to see the gap between our different divs, and we'll change these numbers later. So let's save this, save our portfolio, and refresh. Okay, so we have, I've still have the background red. Okay, I'll change that in a sec. So we've got our divs, and there are these big ugly squares that go straight down the page. So let's go back to our CSS here. Let's get rid of the background red. We don't need that. And we're going to add float left. And so this is going to make it so that our divs go next to each other and nicely resize as we shrink. Okay, cool. So we're already got some of the features we want here. Now, the next thing is in terms of the sizing. I think 30% is nice, but these gaps are too small. And so if we do a little bit of math, we've got 30% here plus 30% here plus 30% here is 90%. So you've got 100% total, and you take away 90, and you're left with 10%. And then the 10% we're going to need to split into, well, let's talk about margins. There's one margin here on the left side of this div, and this div also has a right margin. Then the middle div has a left margin and a right margin. And this div here has a left margin and a right margin, right? So if we inspect, you can actually see that. If we do this mouse over mode, you can see as we highlight the divs, you see how they both have these sort of orange margins being highlighted on both sides. That means we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 margins going across our page. So our 10% that we have left after we've used up our 30%, 30%, 30% for images, we need to divide by 6, and we get 1.66. Now, I'm going to round this to 1.67, which is wrong, but I want you to see what will happen if we do 1.67. So let's make our margin 1.67%. Percent. And then save. And then refresh our photo portfolio. Let's close inspect. We don't need that. Refresh. Now, we want 3 across, but only 2 fit across. And that's because I did 1.67. So 1.67, we've got 6 of those, plus 3 sets of 30%, which is a total of 100.02%. And that 0.02% means that we are setting our divs to be slightly 0.02% wider than our body is. And so it's not exactly right, but we're actually going to round this down just a little bit so that it ends up being just under 100%, right? So if I make this 1.66, then that brings us to 99.96, which is just under the size of the body, and no one's going to notice the 0.04%, I promise. Even on a 4K monitor, you won't notice the tiny little bit difference on the right edge. Okay, so beautiful. We've got these fantastic boxes here. Now what we're going to do is we are going to load images in here. And we're going to do that using a site called Unsplash. Unsplash is a site that specializes in CC0 photography. CC0 is Creative Commons 0, and Creative Commons 0 is a license that allows you to use images for any purposes at all, and you don't even need to give credit to your sources. So freely usable images, if you click this, it actually talks about it. All photos can be downloaded and used for free. You can use them for commercial and non-commercial purposes. So this is very different from a lot of so-called free stuff on the internet. Lots of free stuff on the internet you're not allowed to use for commercial purposes. Every single site photo on Unsplash you're allowed to use for free. And you don't need any permission. Attribution is appreciated, but not even required. And you're just not allowed to sell the photos on without changing them or compiling the photos to give to other people. And in general, this is called CC0 photos. So if you search for CC0 photos, you'll find lots of different websites and options. This is probably the most popular one. This is the one I will be using. But if you don't like this, feel free to search for CC0 photos and find some other options. And because I'm a huge Lego nerd, I'm just going to search for Lego to find some cool Lego pictures. And you'll see, sure enough, here are some of the pictures that I used. Actually, I've already done Lego. Let's just do, let's do stuffed animals. Why not? Let's make this a bit different. Choose whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm going to choose a puppy with a stuffed animal. How could you not like that? So you can download a massive high-resolution version of this if you like. Save it on your computer and use it that way. Or you can just right-click and copy image address. And now what I can do is I can go into Sublime Text, and I can set the background. Let's just do it for all our divs for now. Background image, URL, and then the website. And you get this huge massive website, which is fine, semicolon at the end. And now when I save this, I get the image in all of these divs, except we only have the very, very top corner of the image showing up. Okay, just a reminder, you should be following along. So if you haven't been, go back to the start of the video and try to keep up to here and pause as needed to fill out the code yourself. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to need to set background position to center, and we're going to need to set background size to cover. Okay, so this is going to do two different things. Actually, let's do them one at a time. What cover is going to do is, when I save that, is it is going to resize the images so that it covers the frame. But you'll notice that it sort of cuts off awkwardly partway through the picture. And so to fix that, what we're going to do is we are going to tell it to position the background in the center of the div. So refresh that, and there we go. Now it's centered on the puppy's face. Now, you'll notice here that I've set the photos to be less tall than they are wide, and that's because I chose this sort of aspect ratio. It's sort of 4:6 prints are 3 parts wide, 2 parts tall. So we can do that pretty easily. Instead of setting our padding top to be 30%, we can set it to 20, and then here we are. Then our photos are going to be more like a regular 4:6 print size. If you want them to be portrait, you could. If you want them to be taller, then what you do is you'd set this to be, say, 45%. This is going to look really ugly with this picture that I've chosen, but now you get portrait photos. Or, I mean, maybe that's a bit too big. Maybe you want this to be 20 and this to be 30, so that it is taller, 1.5 times as tall as it is wide. And then it's going to look like this. Anyway, your math is all going to break like this because now this is 80% wide. You've got this big ugly gap right here. So let's go back to portrait mode, or sorry, landscape mode. 30% wide, 20% tall. And now we get all these photos. Okay, now, last thing we're going to do for our photos is we don't want the same photo in every single div. What we did in our HTML is we gave them all different IDs, image 1, image 2, image 3, all the way through image 9. So let's take the URL part and put it inside of the identifier. So hash ID1, or sorry, image 1, I1, and then paste. So now only the first div has that picture in it. So now we need to find some more pictures. I'm going to, just for the sake of time in the video, I'm just going to fill in, let's say, one more picture. So I'm going to copy image address, there we go, and put that in for hash I2, background image, URL, oops, I hit copy when I meant to paste. Copy image address, let's go back, paste, and then throw a semicolon on the end, and come back here and refresh. And there's my second image. Okay, so do that 9 times for your 9 different images, and you'll have your beautiful pictures. And then when you're done, you can delete the cornflower blue background because we don't need that anymore. Okay, almost done. We just need to fix our font, and we need to line it up properly, and we need to add that thin gray line right there. Okay, so let's do that next. So let's go to Google Fonts. This is, I think it's WorkSans. Yeah, WorkSans. WorkSans is the font that I used. I've already got it here. Ready for embedding. Let's get rid of oxygen. That was from the last time. Okay, cool. So WorkSans, I just want the bold because I want the title weight. So if I want, I can just take the, oops, didn't mean to block that. Okay, select the style. So embed, copy this link, and that adds the heavyweight font, which we need for our title, into our HTML document. So we'll put that link, I guess, above the CSS. And now, inside of our CSS, we're going to select this font family. Now, often you want the font family to apply to everything, and so we can put that in the body. saying to use the Work Sans font. So save this, come back and refresh my photo portfolio, and there we go. Now, I need it to be all uppercase. Now, you could go back to the CSS or the HTML and actually type it all in uppercase, but CSS has a way you can do this. Let's put it here, maybe to keep it organized. So our H1, we want text transform uppercase, and that will force our font to be uppercase. Now, this margin here, we're going to need to add to our text on the left-hand side, just like this image here. So we have this margin of 1.66%. Now we're going to add that margin to our header, but we don't want the margin everywhere. We only want the margin on the left-hand side. So that is going to be a margin left. So far, so good. Now the way we're going to add this thin line, you see how it's the exact width of the image. What we're going to do is we're going to set the width of our H1 tag, width 30%, and then we're going to do a border bottom. Let's do a 1 pixel solid. Let's do hash, I don't know, CC for now. That's a nice gray color, and see what that looks like. And there you have it. You've got the line going across. It's too dark, and it's doesn't have the gap that we want. See how there's a spacing here? So let's go into our font, and so we want space between our content and our border, which means that we need padding. So we're going to add some bottom padding between our H1 and our border. So we want padding, not everywhere, just at the bottom of, let's say, 20 pixels. Okay, we're getting close. Now you'll notice that my font is much bigger. So let's lower the font size. Let's make it text. Oops, what have I done? Text size. Oh no, sorry, font size, not text size. Font size. Let's make it. Let's try 20 pixels. All right, that looks like a pretty close match. I made it a little bit smaller. There's one more thing that I've done. You'll notice that there's little gaps between the letters. Sort of gives us sort of this stylistic look. There's no like actual space characters or anything in there. That's just little gaps. And so that is letter spacing. Let's try 3 pixels. And there you have it, 3 pixel letter spacing. Those gaps look a little bit too big, don't they? And I'm not sure exactly why it's not lining up. I can't remember exactly what I did the first time. But aside from the fact that my font's not an exact match, I think we're doing pretty well. Okay, now I'm curious. I'm going to view the source to see what I did the first time. What did I do with my font the first time? Oh, I set font weight to 700. Work sans. 20 pixels. No, what size? Font size 20 pixels. Font size 20 pixels. Oh, maybe I just need to set the font weight. Font weight is how you select bold versus non-bold. Oops. I just hit save. I didn't want to hit save. I want to hit refresh. Okay. I'm not exactly sure why the font isn't showing up exactly. But aside from the fact that I've got blank images here, I've made a nice, beautiful looking photo gallery that basically looks the same as my sample image. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that code along. Hopefully you've got something that looks like this. And hopefully you've actually took the time to find some beautiful pictures. And now you got something you can be proud of that you can show people. Be like, hey, check out this website that I made. And it doesn't look hideous.